Okay, hello, shipwreck fans, and welcome to our latest podcast. Um, Hopefully, most of you will be aware, but if you're not, we are a maritime podcast with a whiskey twist, and also a rum twist, and also a vodka twist, and also a wine twist, and also a cigar twist. And we've got a really special guest today, John, who's going to join us and talk to us about whiskey. So, John, just introduce yourself, please, mate,
Great to be here. Thank you, Dominic.
and just tell us a little bit about yourself, bud.
Yeah, sure. I spent a life in Scotland, and eventually I had to move down here for work. And I've now been in England longer than I've been in Scotland. There was a day a couple of years ago where I worked it out. I'm going to wake up one day in October and I'd been in England longer than I'd been in Scotland. So I told Nicola, my English wife, of course, I was going back to Scotland the day before it, never coming back. But that never happened. So now I've been in England longer than I've been in Scotland. But I worked
That's
for
why you got a bit of a Portsmouth accent.
I've never really lost my accent though. You can take the boy out of Glasgow, but you can't take Glasgow out of the boy, you know. No, I worked in financial services. I worked for Zurich, the big Swiss company, and they moved me first to Maidstone in Kent and then to Portsmouth head office, which is why I find myself down here. So in 2007, I've been a member of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society for a very long time, almost since the start. And in the newsletter, they were asking for any members who would like to become ambassadors because they wanted to extend the members' tasting programme. So I chucked my hand in the ring and I got picked for my area, which was down here. So for a while I was doing I still had the real job, and I was still doing tastings in Southampton and Winchester and Brighton, around here. And then after I retired from financial services, I went to work in London for a Lloyd's of London insurance broker. But after I left that as well, they started sending me all over the world. So for the last 12 years, I've been traveling around the world with SMWS, doing tasting events and media interviews and just generally promoting the whole society's ethos. And I've never, ever, Dominic, been able to think of it as work.
Well, traveling around the world tasting whiskey and talking to people about whiskey is not work.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right.
And of course, that's how you and I got to know each other, because both our wives worked for Zurich. And it's entirely your fault that I got into whiskey.
Well, that's good. That's my job.
Yeah.
Have you got a job?
I mean, you know, there's probably about $2,000 worth in the house at the moment, and that's and that's stuff I could have spent on really boring shit, to be honest. So, because we came around, didn't we, for one night, and you cracked open a bottle of Auchentoshan and Freewood, as we were just discussing to start, and that was sort of the moment where I clicked on, and I went, right, I can really get into this. That's my drink for tonight. Auchentoshan. I think it's probably 12 years old. They say it's non-age statement, but people seem to think it's about 12. And it's bourbon cask, Pedro Jimenez, and Oloroso cask. And it's very sweet. I'm not sure it's a whiskey, but I would recommend to a beginner, maybe. Because if they haven't got a sweet tooth, I think this might really put them off. But we'll get back in. We'll get into that a little bit later on. So you've always been a whiskey drinker.
When you brought up in Glasgow, you kind of, like you brought up with the stuff. I mean, at Hogmanay in Glasgow, all our family used to gather at my grandmother's house. That was the tradition. And all the men, and it was the men back then, it's all changed now, but the men used to bring their own bottle of whiskey to share with the rest of the family. And back then it was all blended. So it was Teachers and Bells and White Horse. And my Uncle Jim used to bring this strange bottle called Black Bottle. And I said, Jim, why do you bring that bottle which nobody's ever heard of, and the rest of them have all got Teachers and White Horse and Bells and Grouse? He said, because, John, they're so popular that as soon as they're 3 years old, they'll be knocking them out. black bottle isn't so popular. So I bet it's lying in the cask for longer because they no need to put it in bottles because it's not selling so as well as the others. That was his daft reasoning. But I love that black bottle whiskey. I love that black bottle whiskey. And of course, the black bottle whiskey had a lot of Islay whiskey in it, which is what kind of got me into the whole thing about Islay whiskey as well. So yes, I was involved with whiskey, and it was, as I say, mostly blended back then. I mean, during the 80s, there was a huge recession, and the distilleries were closing all over the place. And so the malt whiskies couldn't be given to the blenders anymore because the blenders had sales were diving. So the malt whiskey maker started to try and bottle their own malt whiskey to try and sell it, and that's when malt whiskey started to take off. Although Glenfiddich had started bottling single malt in 1963, there was only 3 or 4 distilleries doing that. And when the SMWS, Scotch Malt Whisky Society, started in 1983, in the middle of this recession, by a guy called Philip Hills, known as Pip Hills, people thought he was a madman. In the middle of a recession, you're going to start bottling stuff that no one's ever heard of. Single cask, single malt. Nobody's heard of single malt, hardly, never mind single cask, single malt. We went ahead with it anyway, admits he nearly went bankrupt twice, and now 42 years later, the biggest whisky society club in the world, in multiple countries, with over 40,000 members. So he himself and the society managed to help accelerate over the last few decades that move towards the love of single malt that we now see.
And I mean, the blends now, like you say, Bells and Grouse and Teachers, you know, they don't tend to be really highly rated. But I noticed one thing Ralphie says, that if you ever get the opportunity at an auction, get some 80s or 90s bottlings.
Might not be highly rated by people, you and me, who drink single malt, but remember, we make up about 10 or 11% of the drinking population around the world. 90% of the people who drink whiskey around the world just buy that Scotch blended whiskey and often mix it with stuff. And they have no problem with it at all. It's only you and I, once we start getting into it, and others, once we start into single malt, we start looking down our noses a little bit. Blended whiskey. You have to remember what a skill it is to make that blended whiskey. All these different malts and grains mixed together to get that flavour that they know their customers want consistently, because every single cask tastes differently from every other single cask. So don't think that's about blends. Blends can be very enjoyable. And if I'm just sitting back having a drink one evening and not thinking too much about it, watch a game of football or something, Johnny Walker Black Label fits the bill, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I actually did a cheap whiskey for Christmas review, which we banged out a few weeks ago. And I think I did Shackleton. That was good. High Commission Air, 16 quid. Do you know what? It was all right. It wasn't. I didn't mix it with anything. I just had it neat, and yeah, you know, 16 quid. If I just got in from work, it was fine. I had another one was a Bangor, they're Liverpool, and I accidentally opened the wrong one. But they do a cigar malt, and I bought that for 23 quid. And mate, it was banging. It was an absolute stonker of a whiskey. But yeah, I do see occasionally on freshers, they sometimes sell early 90s bottles of Grouse, and I'm always. I'm tempted just to see if it's actually true, just to do a side-by-side comparison, because apparently back in the 90s, most of them were completely different drinks.
It's a huge debate about that, Dominic. I know a couple of guys who have opened a new distillery up in Scotland, very nice blokes. Mhath Distillery, will be get going, and I'll actually be producing in a few years' time. But they are very keen to tell people that the drive towards strains of barley which produced more volume over the 20th century also cost us flavour. So for example, during the course of the 20th century, the volume created by the Scotch whisky distilleries increased by 50% because of the new strains of barley they created just for volume. And they say they lost flavour. and they're trying to get back to old strains of barley in order to try and create those flavours they believe existed back there in the 70s and 80s. And I was talking to Jim McCheyne, the legendary Jim McCheyne, a couple of years ago on Isla. And I said to him, Jim, you were working in Bowmore in the 1960s. What made that stuff so good that people are paying all that money for it now? You were there. He says, John, when you mean we used to get a few tots a day as a staff benefit. When the manager wasn't looking, we would put anything into the old washback and glug it back. When he wasn't looking, the manager wasn't looking. When he sometimes went into the still room, and the still man was so drunk he'd fallen asleep and missed the cut. And when we used to put it into any old barrels we could find, it was mostly going to blends, and we didn't know so much back then how the spirit reacts with wood. Or today, John, everything is precise, no drinking on site, and we know so much more about spirit types acting with which types of wood, and we know much more about the barrels we put in. He said, we'd like to ask him the question again, John. I said, but Jim, they're paying thousands of pounds for that. He went, John, we've never made better spirit than we're making in Scotland today, whether it's grain or malt. Now, that's the other side of the coin, Dominic, so that's two different arguments. But all of the new, and also Diageo have got this phrase, which they say, so you think barley makes a difference? You mean after it's been boiled twice, ground down, boiled again, consumed by yeast, loaded into a cask that's going to kill it over a period of time? Come on, So the point about that is there is no hard black and white fact about that particular thing. So it'd be interesting if you get that. I've got an old bottle of White Horse there from the 70s, which I've still to open as well. And it would just be interesting to get another one this and see if I can detect any differences. But why would the whiskey distilleries been so keen to make the whiskey so good back then when every bar in Scotland or a better in the world had a bottle of lemonade on the bar? And you got your whiskey and you pop lemonade in it, slung it back. Yeah. So I just think you have to. One of the wonderful things about whiskey is there's very little. It's just right or wrong, black and white. It's all points of view, arguments,
It's all subjective. And that's, like you say, that's part of the fun of it. I mean, Waterford, they really went down that road, didn't they? Of sourcing really high quality barley and, they made such a massive thing of provenance and the terroir and all of that, and they went bust. Apparently there was some some pretty bad financial decisions made.
That's a great point, Dominic. When you went to Brew Clary, you could they actually at the tasting would give you new make spirit made from the same barley grown in fields in different parts of Scotland, and also new make spirit grown from two different types of barley grown in the same field. And it's probably, they probably put the idea in your head by telling you that, but you're sure you can taste the difference, But then Jim McCheyne said to me, and he was working at Brew Clary. He said to me, but after 10 years, John, So
yeah,
there'll never be an absolute definite answer to that, because one of the things that you've said before, what you think about whiskey is very subjective versus objective, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you can have a whiskey tonight and have a certain view of it, and try the same whiskey again on Saturday night and have a different view.
Yeah, and it's amazing how much it can change simply on opening. I mean, do you remember I told you about that bottle of Bunnahabhain 12? I always have a bottle of Bunnahabhain 12.
Yeah.
But it's, and we bought one bottle and we opened it, and we were sat in the conservatory looking at each other, and we were, there's something wrong here. This does not taste right. I mean, I remembered another good bit of advice from Ralphie. He said, you just let it breathe a couple of hours, put the cork in, leave it 2 months. 3 months, which we did. I mean, I completely forgot about it, and then poured myself a glass. About 12 weeks later, back to snuff. It was fantastic again. So clearly, you know, something had happened in that bottle. It just
Sure.
needed a bit of oxygen just to give it a lift and to rest it
Yeah.
and sort it out.
Sure.
What was your first wow dram? Can you remember? Has there ever been
Probably,
one where you've kind of gone, bloody hell, this is astonishing?
well, it's probably that black bottle I mentioned, but after that, 1983, in the midst of this recession, I'm in Islay with my two mates and the three girls, right? Now, this is before visitor centres, whisky festivals, before all of that. And me and the two lads went down and chapped the door at Lafroig one day. And the big guy came out, and security guy came out and said, "What do you guys want?" It turned out the guy whose name was John Calder, who was a retired Glasgow policeman who'd come home to Islay in retirement and was working part-time as security man at Lafroig. He wondered whether he would come in and have a look around, do a bit of a tour. He said, "What are you talking about? This is a working distillery. You don't do tours here." And, and then I think he that was his Glasgow self. Then I had to go back to his Islay self. He said, "Okay, tell us a bit about yourselves." We started chatting to him, and it turned out he knew my father from his time in Glasgow. Not from his work as a Glasgow policeman, I might add, but they were members of the same bowling club or something. So all of a sudden, took us in, walked us round, told us all about it. The guys were all happy to stop work, talk to us. They took us down to the warehouse and gave us some samples of cask strength, single cask Lafroig. Me and the lads just thought this was wonderful. Said, "Okay, John, this is just heaven. How can we buy that?" He said, "Don't be silly. We don't bottle that. That all gets mixed in with other casks. So we can send out Lafroig 10, tasting the same every time we bottle it. Because every cask's different." Oh, I said, "You big tease." You know? But anyway, so the other thing that happened this day, which stayed with me forever, we were getting on with him so well. He said, "After work, I'll come down and meet you at the Mhath hotel where you're staying, and we'll have a couple of drams down there." I said, "Okay." Now, one of my mates was a real whiskey snob. One of these guys that used to say, 10 years maturation, and people put stuff in it. Sacrilege. And he thought you were ready hearing Big John for this. So Big John walked into the hotel bar. Before he'd even ordered the drink, my mate started on him. Bloody sacrilege, people mixing. And Big John shook his head and said, "You know, son, there's 3 distilleries on this island closed. 2 are on part-time working. We're only surviving because we're sending 3 shiploads a week to Japan, so they can put it in their bottles and call it Japanese whiskey. And part of the problem, son, people like you think everybody you meet that you got to drink it neat. So the kids are drinking gin and rum and vodka and mixed it whatever the hell you like, and they're terrified of this stuff that they think they've got to drink neat. So why don't you just drink it the way you like it? And don't tell anybody else how to drink it." And then the pièce de résistance, he turned around the bar, the girl, and said, "Aye, I can have my usual, please." And she brought him a Lafroig and Iron Brew.
What? What the?
And I just stayed with it. I'm sure it wasn't his usual, but there was some kind of thing.
Yeah.
Him and Ina, you know. And I just lived that for the rest of my life because, but that Lafroig cask strength just blew me away and the other 2 guys away as well. And that's why whenever I talk about because of that experience at Lafroig, I just can never, ever, ever criticise the Lafroig. I fell in love with the Lafroig that day, you know, and I can never ever criticise it. So the kid me on, it's the distillery of my heart, you know.
Yeah.
So that really was the big one for me.
I mean, the Lafroig, they started banging out that cask strength again, haven't they? 57. I've not tried it. I think I've got a bottle of 10 and a sherry cask edition. But I really like cask strength whiskey, but I'd put water in it. You know, sometimes. Yeah. Yeah, I've done a couple of experiments on reviews, and I think one whiskey, it really, I can't remember what it was. It just made it a completely different dram anyway. Completely different.
Even all the experts say that, Dominic. few drops of water going to change that dram completely. And at the IW, at the tasting panel on the IWSC, they diluted it to 21% before they taste that.
Yeah.
So I think that people who think they've got to drink it at 58%, I mean, you don't have to do it. You can sip it at 58%, then put some water in it to see how you feel about it now. If you don't like it with the water in it, drink the rest of the bottle at 58, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes if I don't want to put whiskey in a cask strength, I find a cigar really changes the character of a whiskey. I mean, a cigar can actually take, if you think you've got a bit of a problem with a whiskey, and it's not really to your liking, I found that a smoke with it can actually make it a lot better.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's not just that; it's the aesthetics of just the whiskey and the cigar together.
Yeah,
You know, talk about relaxing. You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, I mean, we still need to get you down to the smoking lounge in Gosport.
Oh,
if
love
you
to,
can get
love
a
to
lead.
do that. Love to do that.
Yeah, because Mario, he's a great host.
Yeah.
And he's got a good selection. He's just moved as well. He's just moved locations, but
Okay.
it's proper. Yeah, it's proper old leather sofas, and you can take your own whiskey in. So it's cheap afternoon now. Oh yeah. He's got no problem with that. As long as you know you don't walk in with your cigars as well.
No.
But no, I mean we go there and you know, Karen gives us all a lift down at Gosport, and we just take some crates of beer and some whiskey and some wine and
Okay. Well,
yeah. So we'll try and get you down there.
Sure.
Do you want to give us a quick kind of brief about what SMWS actually do?
Well, as I said to you, in 1980, what happened is Pip Hills was an accountant and he didn't like whiskey. And all of a sudden, in the 1970s, a friend of a friend who bought casks from Glenfarclas for his own personal use turned up at his friend's house in Aberdeenshire one day and gave Pip this whiskey, a glass of this whiskey. And Pip said, "That's not whiskey." He said, "Yes, it is." He said, "That's not been drinking." He said, "That is whiskey, you know." And Pip loved it so much that that moment forward, he'd fallen in love with single cask single malt whiskey. So he went to Glenfarclas and bought a cask to share with his friends back in Edinburgh. And as more people heard about it, most people wanted to join the group. So he got another cask and shared out again. And eventually the group got bigger and bigger. News got out and Pip decided we better make a club or something official about this. So they bought the J.G. Thomson building at Leith in Edinburgh in 1983 and started the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. Now, the Scotch Malt Whisky Society was about being a members club. It was about attracting people to the club who wanted to learn about single cask, single malt whisky, what it was all about, how it was made, what made the differences, and all that kind of thing. And that's effectively what happened. And they started, the first one they bottled was a Glenfarclas, of course, and they went from there. But you had to be a member to get a bottle. And then the offices that they worked in was really just the offices for the club. It didn't actually open as a members bar until for 6 years later. But after that, they started to, when he thought he was struggling to get it moving, the Scotsman newspaper came along in 1985, very interested in what he was doing, an article in their paper about tasting whiskey like doing wine, you know, like the Romans and all that flavour wine, which nobody had ever done before. Then the Times in London did it, and it just exploded. And after my experience at Lafroig in 1983, in May of that year, they started up in September. As soon as I found out about it, I joined in 1984, you know. So I like to joke with people that this was a bunch of posh Edinburgh people who started this. And I was the first Glaswegian to join. And when I phoned them up and said, "Look, I'd like to join," they said, "But you're from Glasgow."
Well, you don't want a Ouija in the club.
You can't even speak properly, you know. but no, that's just a bit of a joke. So then membership grew and grew, and because of that recession they were in, Dominic, a lot of the malt whiskey distilleries were dead keen to give them casks because they had them sitting in the warehouse. The blenders wouldn't take them, you know. So it started off very, very well, and then it kind of just motored after the mid-80s, and we opened up another a venue eventually in London in 1999. Then another one in Edinburgh Newtown in 2004, and then Glasgow Bass Street about 6 years ago. A week before we had to close because of COVID, you know. And as we expanded into foreign countries, Canada, Japan, Switzerland, then those branches, these franchises kind of opened partner bars there as well. So the news started to get out, and then they started to win awards, and it just kind of went from there. The numbering system is very interesting. As you know, we don't put the name on the bottle; it's a numbering system. What Glenn Farquhar said to him right at the beginning was, "Wait a minute, Pip. Wait a minute. We mix our casks with other casks to get a consistency of flavour. If you bought a single cask, it would be a one-off flavour, and if you put Glenfarclas in a bottle, people will get confused. It won't be like our Glenfarclas." Okay. So what do we do then? So they adopted this numbering system. So the very first bottling that we ever did was 1 for Glenfarclas, .1 for the first cask from Glenfarclas. So every distillery has its permanent first number, and the number after the dot is the number of casks I've had from that distillery over the years. Pitt used to tell people in the newsletter which distilleries it was. And then when the internet came along and Google, you know, all you got to do is Google SMWS codes and you can get all of the numbers and which distilleries it is. There's no big secret anymore, but it's become a bit iconic in the world of whiskey, you know, the SMWS numbering system. And so 2004, Glenmorangie bought us, and then about 5 minutes later, they were bought by Louis Vuitton Moët Hennessy. So we were owned by the French for a while. In 2015, we had a management buyout with the support of some investment companies, and we became independent again. So we're now owned by the Artisanal Spirits Company, and now we're quoted in the stock market from 4 years ago. So it is the Artisanal Spirits Company, and, you know, so life has changed from those very early days. Pip actually left the society about 1995, 12 years after he started, but he's kind of been invited and been encouraged to come back in for the last 8 or 9 years, and he's now a big player in the society again. He's often appears in our videos and our tastings and stuff, and I'm very friendly with him. Just recently though, he's 85, and he's been diagnosed with prostate cancer, and he likely won't be around that much longer, you know. It's a shame.
Yeah. I mean, we've been up to the club. Obviously, you put me through my paces one night up in London, which was that was fantastic night out. Really enjoyed that. Yeah, and I love the clubhouse, but given given how tight people's wallets are going now, do you think clubs like SMWS are going to have to kind of take a pace back and look at how to bring in new people? Because I mean, Signatory really, it looks like they stole a march with that new line of whiskies, which were, I mean, they're phenomenal value. They normally go, you know, around the sort of 50, 70 mark, don't they? And they really took the market by storm there, I think. And one of the problems is, do people have money to join a whiskey club every year? When if you think, well, it's great having these clubhouses available, but if I live in, you know, Plymouth, what are the chances of me having the opportunity to go to the clubhouse in London? I mean, would it be an option, maybe a reduced membership, so you don't get entry into the clubs, but you still got the access to the great whiskey?
I've heard that many times, and it's been fed back to Edinburgh many times. And you're absolutely right. I mean, at a time like this, why would you join the Scotch Malt Whisky Society at a fee before you even buy the whiskey, when there's loads of other independent bottlers who just buy it without being a member? So, and there's no doubt, I mean, we have just gone through a mini spate of redundancies, like others have done. Some distilleries are closing, all that. So we're definitely pulling in the horns a little bit, because of the current economic climate. But we have looked at this membership, and now the current arrangement is £100, but you get a bottle for that as well. Okay, for new membership. So effectively, membership's been drastically reduced, because of the bottles were £60-70 maybe, Now but I think you're right. Many people say to me, and I can understand it very well. You said Plymouth or Bristol. I mean, what the hell's how the hell does my membership compare to somebody in London or Glasgow? They can take their friends from the venue, and they've heard that many times, but we've never ever acted upon it. We've never had that out of town kind of membership thing. And I don't know why. It seems quite logical to me, but obviously everybody can still buy the whiskey. And also, when you get into a venue, sometimes the venues have discounted whiskey on sale from their own stock. But if you can't get into the venue, you've no idea how to get that, because it's got to be bought in the venue,
Yeah.
So yes, I think there probably has been an imbalance in that case over the years, Dominic. But I think all they're trying to do is they're trying to make as many members' tastings available in all regions as possible, so that people can come along to the regional tastings with the bottles that they taste up for sale, usually at a discount. They try and equalise the whole thing,
Yeah, because I mean, you got a cost in as well. I mean, people will say, "Well, I've got to get the train up there because I'm not going to drive up and drive home in one day."
Right.
Which means that I've got to get a hotel in London, and then your evening out, in a fantastic bar, you're looking at hundreds of pounds outlay, aren't you? And you can just see people going, nah, you just can't do it. I mean, I would highly recommend anyone to, if you get the opportunity to go to a whiskey tasting, I think it's a great way. If you're thinking, I'd quite like to get into whiskey, I'd say a tasting at a venue like the one that we went to a couple of months ago is a fantastic introduction, isn't it?
Well, I also think, Dominic, that you get so many different expressions from so many different distilleries these days. If you mention any distillery, well, many different expressions do they have? And everybody talks about 70 or 80% of the flavour coming from the cask in which the whiskey is matured, right? So when you get a whiskey and you're Auchentoshan, so what flavours are coming from the bourbon? What are coming from the Oloroso? What are coming from the PX? If you haven't educated your palate. So sometimes I think the best way to do is at the SMWS, sample all these whiskies that are matured in bourbon and Oloroso and PX and get an idea which flavours are produced. I mean, it's never the exact flavour one to the next, but there's similarities. And then when you've done that, when you've educated your palate to expect something from Oloroso, then when you buy your Auchentoshan cask, you can then say, wait a minute, that part of the flavour is definitely from the Oloroso, and that part is from the bourbon, and that part must be from the PX. And so all of a sudden, you can actually start to educate yourself in terms of where the flavours are coming from. Because people say if you start with blended whiskey and build your way up to single malt and then single cask single malt, I just think that's the wrong way to go about it.
Yeah, I think there is a line though where it does start to get a little bit pretentious with the way that some people write it up. I mean, I like to think I've got a fairly good palate, but there's some of the reviews that you read, sometimes you can see why people might be put off. I mean, in one of my reviews, I might say, well, I've got vanilla. There's a white wine, fortified wine background. That's probably coming from the sherry cask. I get a hint of sometimes wet cardboard at the moment for some reason. I don't know what's going on there. But then you'll read other reviews and you'll see I'm getting hints of prancing ponies in dew-filled meadows, and the larks are singing in the trees as the morning fog lit. And I'm just, mate, get fucking over yourself. Really?
I know, Dominic. That's the sort of thing that happens in our tasting panel. What happens is that every wee bottle has to pass a tasting panel, right? So you get 6 or 8 people, and you get the chairman sitting there, and the 6 or 8 people who's got to say what they're getting and all that kind of stuff. I'll give an example in a minute about something I said. And then the chairman has to take all these notes away and write up in a tasting note. Now remember, talk about prancing ponies on it, the tasting note is supposed to be a wee bit of fun as well. It's not supposed to. But sometimes when I look at the tasting notes, I just think, my God, the chairman has had too much of his own turrup that day. You know what I mean? I'm on a tasting panel a few years ago, so I was Ewan Campbell was there. Ewan, I think I'm getting leather from an old car. He said, very good, John. What's the model of the car? Now, it's not as ridiculous as it sounds. What he's thinking is, if he's got a memory of something that I can drag out from him, it might be worth a better tasting note. And what I was thinking about was my brother-in-law's Rolls Royce, 1953 Rolls Royce. You know, that makes for a better tasting note, doesn't it? But
yeah,
we also have to remember, Dominic, that your olfactory bulb ends up where all the aromas go in your brain end up in what's called your limbic system. And in your limbic system in your brain, that also holds your memories and your emotions. So a smell can remind you of some memory in your life or an emotion you felt, you know? So
which is why with peated whiskey, it doesn't happen with Talisker, but Lefroy and Lagavulin, I always get a barbecue in the distance in the forest and sort of marinated meat cooking. Something done in a sweet glaze, and that triggered some memory from long ago. And it was the most bizarre thing. I was just sat there and I went, it's a barbecue in a wood. And then I went, you pretentious fucking dick. What are you on about? But it's permanently there now. Like hazelnut with Lagavulin.
Yeah, well, but the point is, Dominic, is that that's a very personal thing for you. So what I say to people is, because of that process, the factory bulb, the limbic system, your memories and all that, you cannot be wrong about a tasting note because it might be very personal to you. I suppose it's personal when it gets to the point about the prancing horses and the sitting on the shores of Loch Long and a barbecue down the beach and all that. But
pikes in the background.
Yeah, that's right. But those are almonds and honey and peanuts and stuff like that. Some people get that and some people won't. What I say to people is this: in order to try and educate your palate, all you need to try and do is when you're tasting a whiskey, what are you getting? Is it fruit or is it vegetable? Is it woody? And then kind of try and break it down from there. Just like these tasting wheels you've seen, you know, try and break it down gradually. You know, like is it dried fruit? Is it fresh fruit? What type of fruit is it? Is it cooked fruit? You know, and once you've kind of got onto whether this is orange, what type of orange it is, then it helps you try and work it out in your brain what actually is definitely you're getting. But don't worry, I agree with you. Some of the tasting notes he says, "You'll give us a break, please." You know.
Yeah. But I mean, the other thing is it's supposed to be fun as well. I mean, I just used to knock back Glenfiddich 12, just didn't think about it. Now I'm doing whiskey reviews, but I've always say to people, look, if you want to get into it, there's certain things that you need to do as well. So you need to be in a good mood. First of all, that's absolutely essential. Free from
absolutely. Yeah. But actually, you have to remember, Dominic, there's a difference between tasting and drinking. You know, so yeah, you have to be in that kind of tasting mood. You have to have that kind of objective streak. It says that even if I don't like this whiskey particularly, I'm here to try and analyze what flavor compounds are making up the whole. You know, I mean, if you're just drinking stuff, the whole thing can wash over and you give a wonderful experience. One of the best ones we had was a couple of years ago, and the bottle was called Whiskey flavoured condoms and skunked roadkill. And the marketing director says to me, John, how are we going to sell that?
More importantly, how did they know what that is like?
Flew off the shelf. Exactly. Who the hell knew about that?
Who came across a dead raccoon wearing a whiskey flavored condom on the side?
I know. Just unbelievable.
Yeah, but I think there's always certain things that you can do. You kill your phone, because you want to be free from distractions. Don't read reviews first. I try never to do that, because I don't want to be, subconsciously influenced.
Right.
Don't have a scented candle lit in the corner because you're wasting your time. You're gonna be getting, vanilla off a glass, and in the corner you got your Wickford vanilla candle going. So it's kind of inevitable, really. And just take notes and learn to enjoy it, and you'll get a sense of I get a sense of satisfaction out of it, especially if I recommend a bottle to someone, and they buy and they go, yeah, do you know what, that was absolutely bang on.
Yeah, I agree.
What makes a good whiskey?
Now that is a huge question, because you and I might like you might like a whiskey, I might not like it, and vice versa, right? But I think what makes a good whiskey, you can't be objective, but you have to be subjective in that what you're looking for is the balance between the different types of flavour groups. So you're looking for sweet, and you're looking for spicy, and you're looking maybe for a little touch of smoky if it's there and all that kind of stuff. If you have a whiskey which is basically, well, all I'm getting here is sweetness, sweetness at front, sweetness on the palate, sweetness at the back, nothing else is coming through, then that doesn't sound as if it's been very well created, does it? So I think that what you're looking for in a good whiskey is a range of flavours that you can sit and help identify across a spectrum of flavour groups, rather than just saying, I'm really not getting very much here, to be honest with you, apart from that sweetness, or apart from the whiskey, So I guess that's all I can say. The thing about a good whiskey is incredible. After tastings all in the world, how different people, different countries react to the same whiskey. Quite incredible. How some whiskies are very popular here, but not so popular over there. And what we had to do really in SMWS was, for foreign countries like Japan and China, we had to. What's the point in telling a Chinese member of the SMWS that this whiskey's going to taste like, get mine with Arbroath Smoky and Tunnock's Caramel Wavers?
Yeah, because they've got no point of reference.
So we had to work at trying to equate that to stuff which meant something to them, and we did that, and we did it quite successfully. But there's just definitely a different feeling in different parts of the world about what is a good whiskey, and I suppose that comes down to the fact that wine is different in different parts of the country because of the food that they eat, and how they drink their wine and whiskey. But I think I would just have to say that I would look for something which, when you are drinking it, you might get an initial thought into something else, and then it finishes with something else. So it's like a little journey. Whereas if you have a bad whiskey and you're tasting it and it's nothing really changes, and you've swallowed it and okay, nothing much happened there,
Yeah, and it's all right to A, not like a whiskey, and B, if it doesn't taste right, it might be a bad bottle. I mean, a few months ago, I bought a bottle, didn't I? And I did everything I could to try and bring it out. And I eventually had to send you a sample, didn't I? Just to double check, and I was right at the end. It doesn't put me off that distillery, because these sort of things happen in production. But I was a bit disappointed. I did write to him and I did say, look, I wasn't really happy with this, and I never got anything back. So that did put me off a little bit.
That is disappointing, yeah. I mean, sometimes you get cork taint. I've heard stories with cork taint, a lot less now than maybe I did here before. But the SMWS guy in Australia wrote quite a long article on cork taint, TCA, about how that really can affect the whiskey,
Yeah, I think a lot of people are saying why not just go synthetic now?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's no reason why to keep using cork. It's
Sure,
bad if you're a cork grower in Portugal, but
sure, sure.
yeah, I think synthetic's the way to go ahead. I
Yeah,
mean, back to the what makes a good whiskey. I mean, I think Daniel at Wizard Academy, who runs the Whiskey Vaults YouTube channel, he says the best whiskey is the whiskey you like the way you like to drink it, and I mean that's an entirely kind of fair thing. If your thing is high commissioner or teachers, um, yeah, why not? I
yeah,
can't.
yeah, yeah. No, that's a good answer, Dominic. But if you're on a tasting panel, you have to try and put that to one side and analyze it like very objectively because you're analyzing it for other people, not for you.
Hmm.
I mean, even though you don't like it, is it good enough to be bottled? Probably is, because I know other people would like it, you know?
Yeah, I'm just looking for that. That when we went to that tasting, there was a bottle there. I ended up buying the Mossburn, the cognac finished one, I think it is. But there was one there I just could not get along with, and I did some notes on it, and it just was not for me at all. And that doesn't mean it's a bad bottle. It's just there was something in that I think that
Sure.
triggered me, and I was just nah, this is not for me. It just didn't
Yeah.
taste right. But then I think Karen, who was sat with us, she quite liked it. So
Maybe I was at a tasting at Wessex Whiskey Club last month, and somebody produced a bottle of Bond 7 blended whiskey from Australia, which is mostly sold in India. And when I tasted that, I knew why, you know? It was,
it's going to bring us on to the next question,
yeah,
because I want to get a flash out here. Non-Scottish whiskey.
yeah. Well, I mean, whiskey's, I always like to say to people, quote Michael Jackson's famous quote, Michael Jackson, the whiskey writer and beer writer. He said, Scotch is the only drink in the world you can ask for anywhere in the world by relation to the country it comes from alone. Not Scottish or Scots, Scotch. You don't even have to use the word whiskey. In a wee bar in a little village in Peru, you can ask for a Scotch and don't you have to say whiskey, they know what you mean. So Scotch is the guiding light, but they're making whiskey all over the world now. And look how well the English whiskey market is done, for example.
Mm.
I mean, India as well, Tasmania. I mean, Japan. So it really is. They're being affected by the current recession as well. I still think that I know Scottish Whisky Association got a kilt into a bit of a tiz over the latest English whiskey guidelines that they're trying to promote. But I guess Scottish Whisky Association's role in life is to protect provenance and place of Scotch whisky. There's no doubt that there's good whisky being made all over the world, you know. And when you look at some of the export figures, I mean, Irish whisky doing well as well. I
Yeah.
mean, they were down to 3 distilleries not so long ago, you know.
Mm.
Now they're up to 20. But we'll need to see how this current downturn settles things down, you know. I mean, one of the things that we can like about the Japanese and Scotland, Masataka Taketsuru came to Scotland at the end of the First World War to study chemistry at Glasgow University. He wanted to go back and build a distillery in Japan, and he studied. He went to worked in several distilleries as well to find out what it was all about. Married a Scottish lass from Kirkintilloch. Went back to Japan, and he opened the Yoichi distillery, and he became the father of Japanese whiskey, and she became the mother of Japanese whiskey. Actually, the last from Kirkintilloch, but he always said he wanted to do it the way it was done in Scotland, and that's why he opened his distillery in bloody Hokkaido, which is the coldest part of Japan, you know. but and Japan until recently were they were bottling all sorts of stuff and calling it Japanese.
Yeah.
So
I tend to stay clear of Japanese whiskey.
yeah. So they're getting bulk from Ben Nevis, put it in the bottle, call it Japanese whiskey. But the good guys in Japan are trying to stop all that now, and they're trying to get it into law. So you have to put it on the bottle and be truthful what's in the bottle. So all that might change, but at least I think everywhere in the world you have to watch the distilleries you're using, because some will be pretty good, some might not be so clever. In Scotland, they've all got to abide by the rules and the provenance, or they get slapped down, you know. So I think that's what people around the world know. But I can't not say that there's no good whiskey being made around the world, you know. I mean, I was in Denmark a few years ago for the festival over there. We did a tour of Farry Locan distillery, which is quite near Vejle, where the festival was. They don't use peat for smoking the barley; they use nettles. You know, that's just what they do. You know, and it was a very nice whiskey, actually. You know, I
mean, Cotswolds are phenomenal.
yeah.
I like Paul John whiskey. I know you're not sold on that, but I think they've knocked out some fantastic bottlings. And but I also want to really, that sample of that German whiskey that knocked my socks off. That was just phenomenal. That's going to be a absolutely gleaming. And Tasmania, I've heard that they're starting to knock out some really good stuff as well.
Yeah.
I haven't tried Taiwanese whiskey. Everyone seems to do quite a song and dance about that. I've not tried it yet because it is sort of fairly expensive.
And I bought a SNWS Taiwanese there. Actually, I'll send you a sample.
Oh yeah, I'd love to give that a go.
Okay.
Yeah. But I seem to be steering clear of bourbon these days. I've got a lot of bottles of bourbon in there, and I'm just not drinking it, and I don't know why that is.
I have never liked bourbon that much because of the sweetness. I mean, I always thought the sweetness was a dominating factor, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I opened a Jim Beam single cask. Fuck me, it's dreadful. I've finished it off in lemonade over the past month. And for 60 quid, I felt a bit seen off.
Yeah.
To be honest, I think they got a barrel problem there. It was sour. And that's when you know you're turning into a real nerd. When you're starting to go, they've got a barrel problem. They're not using properly seasoned wood. Then you have to slap yourself around the head and go, get a grip of yourself.
Yeah.
If you want to get into whiskey, how do you think there's a process? What would you recommend to people who are listening to this and they think, do you know what? I like a whiskey and Coke, and I like a Jack Daniels and Coke, and I fancy trying this out and just seeing if I can get into it. Would there be any words of advice?
Well, all I can say is if you go to a good cocktail bar, the guys will help you understand the cocktail and the flavors that are coming through from the whiskey, and let you taste the whiskey straight alongside it. So you can get an idea of what the flavors and the whiskey are creating for the cocktail. If you're scared of getting into single cask or single malt whiskey straight off, that might be a way to do it. But I still think that, as I said before, and obviously I admit I'm biased, the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, I mean, you can actually understand there all of the nuances that are created by types of cask. It's all cask strength. You don't have to drink it at cask strength. There's jugs of water there, you know.
Yeah.
And obviously people like me and the guys, the ambassadors behind the bar, will be more delighted to talk you through it. And what would you like about that? Would you not like about that? Try this one, see if you like that more, and all that kind of stuff. Otherwise, you're kind of relying on a friend or an acquaintance or a local bar, hoping that they could help you a lot. I mean, for example, there's a bar I discovered last year in Horsham called the Black Jug. And the last thing I expected to see in Horsham was a whiskey bar. Like 50 or 60 or 70 whiskies on the bar, you know. Now, that guy there obviously is so keen that he would love to talk you through it as well. I think you have to, if you're really new and you want to try and get into it, you have to engage with somebody who's knows about it but is willing to listen to what else you like so that it can try and fit the types of whiskey that might suit your palate.
Yeah, I mean that's always my first question. Have you got a sweet tooth, or are you more sort of cheese
Yes,
and biscuits person? Because if you don't understand that about them, you can just send them off on the wrong trip straight
yeah,
away. And the same as if they say, well, I'm quite interested in trying a smoky whiskey. Don't give them a Lafroig.
no, that's right. That's right.
Or
And
a Talisker. Yeah,
the other thing, Dominic, is how many people have I come across in my whiskey career that have come across to me and said, I don't like whiskey. It's happened to me a lot of times. I said, why? When did you try it? The number of people that tried it at a birthday party when they were 18,
yeah.
at 3 o'clock in the morning, and everything else is finished, and all that was left was a bottle of Bells in the corner there.
Uh,
And it's just like Pip, way back in the 70s. When you give them a cask of flavourful single malt, they said, that's not whiskey. He said, yes, it is whiskey. It's just different from the whiskey that you remember, and that can change your whole attitude.
and of course, if you've been on the tenants all night and the last thing available to drink at 2 o'clock in the morning is a whiskey, the next day your hangover is going to be because of the whiskey.
Yes,
Can possibly to be about the 15 pints of tenants.
that's right. Yeah,
kind of, and I think the snobbery does put people off as well. I mean, the thing that we've said about water, it's astonishing the number of people who kind of turn their nose up at anyone who puts water in whiskey, and yet I've been drinking in Merrill in Glasgow, and there was a jug of water every sort of 10 feet on every bar in the Politician, in the Bugle, so it's not anti-Scottish.
Oh, no.
Because every single, I mean, I remember every single bar had a jug of water.
Of course.
And the old fellas all added, a couple of drops of water.
Yeah.
So how can it be, not, how can it not be the done thing to put water in whiskey? I just don't.
That thing about putting anything in your whiskey is sacrilege. It's just so of a bygone era now,
Yeah. Scottish whiskey industry, is it slowing down, do you think?
It's certainly slowing down at the moment. I think we're faced with a couple of things. First of all, we're in a bit of a cost of living issue, aren't we?
Yeah.
And so the cost of living thing all around the world. There's also a statistic that's thrown about saying that nearly 30% of youngsters between 18 and 25 are not drinking alcohol at all. They've been told how bad it's going to be for them. They've been trying to live healthy lifestyles. They're just staying off it. That's why all the big whiskey companies are now doing no and low alcohol stuff, yeah? So if you think about that, as the kids come out of school and university over the next coming years, who the hell is going to be drinking all this stuff? Is all the drinkers moved to the whiskey bar in the Sky, I was also reading today that 54% of American adults say they drink alcohol. Only 54%. So I think that it's a mix of the cost of living, Mr. Trump's tariffs. It's just the trading difficulties. I just think that we're on a downer. But Dominic, we've been here many times in 200 years, I mean,
yeah.
The last time was the 80s, as we were talking about earlier. And then we had the bloody biggest boom we've had for 100 years. And now we're on a downturn again. So there's no historical reason to suggest that this would be permanent. Who knows? Look what's happening in the world. I mean, you just don't know what the next thing might be that will affect it. So I think at the moment we're going to see more closures. We're going to see more redundancies. I would hate to be one of the new distillers
Yeah, I was going to say they've picked the worst time, haven't they? Now.
who sworn to secrecy, but I was talking to a distillery in Scotland last month, and they said if they a relatively new distillery, if they don't get investment by May, at latest they're gone.
Yeah,
So I think there's going to be a few more go like that. I mean, the guys I was telling you about are opening Mhath, the guys who like the old style barley and all that. They must be thinking, oh my God, what have we done? Choosing this time to try
yeah.
and create a distillery which wasn't even opened yet. So I think it's going to be a lot more casualties.
And I can't get my head around it because, and yet they're still, they're doing inaugural bottlings and run one and run two and one free. And they're trying to charge 70, 80, 90 quid a bottle. And some of them are still trying to do 50 CL bottles. I just read the room, boys and girls.
I know. And I also think one of the problems, Dominic, I think some of them might get a bit. I mean, Loch Lee, for example, got a little bit of sense about this. All these different expressions. I mean, what you want is get the customers get attached to you with this expression that they love. Not tell them, oh, another one's another one. So Loch Lee are stopping all that now, and they're going to focus on some standard expressions. There's so many distilleries baffling their potential customer base with different expressions of whiskey when the customer just wants to associate this whiskey with that distillery.
Yeah. I mean, what one distillery shut down, and I'd had a couple of bottles, and I was gutted. It used to be a whiskey that was used as a filler, and then they started doing their own bottlings, and it was a fabulous whiskey. But I think when we say closing distilleries, a lot of them go into care and maintenance, don't they? And they just stop production.
Oh yeah, some of them pause, and then they're hoping to be able to come back. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Waterford closed administration, as you mentioned earlier. Macmira in Sweden went in administration, and there's going to be a few more.
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing. I assume Waterford are getting bought because they've got thousands of barrels
Yeah.
in stock. So I'd expect to see them open again.
Sure.
Couple more questions, is that all right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, come on, Dominic. Yeah, no bother.
Yeah. Other spirits. What do you drink?
Well, I did a few years ago. I did a tour with a few other SMWS people, cognac and Armagnac, and I got quite enchanted with the whole Armagnac thing. Actually,
Ralphie's big into Armagnac at the moment, isn't he? Yeah, and rum.
Particularly Chateau. I like very like rum as well. I mean, what thing fascinating about rum is you can make it anywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, Armagnac was quite enchanting. We did a tour at Chateau Lobad, and after it, Dennis, the owner, who was a lovely, lovely man, I'm still in touch with him. See us all to lunch in the boardroom. And as we finished lunch, okay, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to give you each a sample of Chateau Lobad from your year of birth. What is your year of birth? And I just started laughing. And he said, why are you laughing, John? And I said, I'm a wee bit older than the people around here. Dennis, what is your year of birth? He says, 1974. 1974 bottle. There you go. Incredible. So that kind of thing happens. 1954, sorry. But when that sort of thing happens, you just love the experience, don't you? Just remember
Yeah.
it, But also, I also like rum. I have drank tequila in my and after our visit to Chile and Chile and Peru last year, I got a couple of bottles of Pisco, but I can't say I'm a big fan of that.
No, I'm not a fan of tequila. I'll never go back. I mean, I'm a big rum drinker. I got a bottle of Black Top Distillers edition for Christmas. I've always got a bottle of Trawler rum in normally, which of course is bottled up in Scotland. I mean, it's made out in the Caribbean, but wine, big wine drinker.
Yeah. I do like wine. I quite like. I would say probably my my favorite wines is Albarino. I love that kind of dry Cyllenic. This is kind of
Yeah.
I
Amarone.
also like red. Yeah, I like red. I like big Riocas and stuff as well.
Yeah, I can't remember what that. I had a bottle of Amarone cask aged.
Oh, okay.
That was fabulous, but it was about 70, 80 quid, and it was just, 100 quid is my upper limit these days for a bottle of whiskey, and ideally I'd rather spend between sort of 40 and 50. But yeah, it was Amarone cask finished, and it was one of those rare whiskies where you could actually taste.
Oh, sorry,
wine.
you talk about red wine finished whiskies.
Yeah.
Oh, I think we were talking about red wines. Oh no, I think it's I quite like port cask finishes as well. In fact, I quite like port. Period.
Yeah.
I quite like port and sherry.
I'm terrible with port. If I open a bottle of port, I've got to do the bottle.
Yeah.
I can't putting a half drunk bottle of port on the side is wrong. You got to.
Yeah.
I'm convinced it goes off in 24 hours.
Sure.
So, do you have any final thoughts, advice for listeners waiting to get into whiskey, wanting to experience it? And where do we find you in SMWS? And obviously, we'll put a link up.
Where I would find, just following on from your point about costs, Dominic, I always say to people, do not, for God's sake, go out and spend £1,000 a bottle of whiskey unless it means nothing to you. I just say to people, you got a bottle of whiskey at 100 quid and a bottle of whiskey at £1,000, are you going to get 10 times the flavour experience? No, you're not. And some of the marketing that goes on these days, particularly with some of the distilleries that are driving up premiumization and attaching to other big market names and stuff, partnerships, or attaching themselves to famous Hollywood actors and that kind of stuff. God's sake, you don't need all that, There's plenty of bloody good whiskey, less than £100, and as you said, anywhere between 50 and 70, and it's actually a bit less now than it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So all I would say is that if you fancy it, we are smws.com. We have got venues in Glasgow, London, Newtown, Edinburgh, and Leith. We've got partner bars around the country where you can look them up on the website. But certainly, if anybody who's listening is local to us here, Dominic, you and me be happy to meet them in London and take them through a wee session or something, Absolutely.
I mean, my always in the stash, Deanston 12, Bunnahabhain 12, Shackleton. What else would I say? I'd say Talisker 10. They're just the constants. They're the ones, and Arran 10, of course. I mean, if I was to recommend one, and I mean, I always say Shackleton just to get your hand in. But if they wanted to kind of move on, any of those I think would be a phenomenal start. Deanston, Bunnahabhain.
I agree. You mentioned a couple there that I love as well. Talisker 10 and Bunnahabhain 12. Great whiskies.
Yeah. Okay, cheers for that, mate. That was fantastic.
Great stuff. Thank you, Dominic.
It's always good to pick the brains of the maestro. And I'll ping you. I think we've got a date down the Cigar Lounge book.
Sure.
Later this month. I'll get the date to you and see if you're free.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, we just go down there, and it'd be nice to smoke a cigar with you again, because of course you did come round, and we had a cracking night round here.
I've got a lot of Robert Burns stuff coming up from next week, of course, yeah. But yeah, I'm happy to try and fit in with you, yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, mate. Cheers for that.
Great stuff, Dominic. Thank you very much.
All right, buddy. Absolutely gleaming. Cheers, dude.
Cheers.